So the purpose of this recorded lesson is to go over your final assignment, which is due on the very, very last day of this class, which is on a Saturday. And it's the Strategic Communications, Media, and Engagement Plan, understanding that this particular plan has a few components. So the final assignment is due on Saturday, October 10th at 11:59. That's the very last day of this class. And the assignment has a few components. The first one is a stakeholder map, and you're going to see exactly an example of that. A consumer journey map with media activities. You're also going to see an example. And then a strategic communications and media plan or engagement for one of the stakeholders that you identify in the strategic plan has several sections associated. Now, what I recommend for this assignment is to perhaps do it for a company that you're working for. Even if it's your own company, I think that, the more relevant that you make it to what you're already doing, the more this assignment is going to have, meaning, and, you're going to understand it. The examples actually that I'm offering here is the example that I use for the program that I direct at FIU, the Global Strategic Communications Creative Track. And this plan is actually what I'm implementing and what I'm doing. So it's basically a case of practicing what I'm teaching. So let's understand how the mindset that you have to go in to basically do this plan and start tying some of the things that you have learned along in the class, even though you're not going to necessarily apply everything, but you're going to apply some of the basic components of putting this plan together. So when you understand, when you're trying to get into that mindset, that preparation, there are several things that you have to do. Number one, you have to understand your current scenario, the environment that you're working on. For example, if you're going to do this assignment right now, the environment is the uncertainty of this circumstance, how that's affecting business, and what are you doing about it? So where is it that you are, and where exactly do you want to go, move the needle to? And you have to design your plan to address concerns, desires of your client or the company that you're working for. Here is where you research competitors to see who they are, how they are marketing the product, and understand, again, the climate of the situation, the corporation. Number two, establish your goals. And goals, you're going to see that goals and objectives are composed differently. Goals are long-term, and they tend to be broader in scope. And objectives are smaller timeframes, tighter timeframes, and more specific. So establish goals of the plan, which is the generic long-term. The third is defining the audience. And here you're going to do actually one of the exercises, which is the stakeholder map. And the stakeholder map is, and you're going to see an example, is basically to map out all the audiences that you have. Now, you may have several audiences, and those audiences should have their own plan, even if it's simple. And we're going to get into that part in a minute. Then choosing the activity or the task or the tactics and channels. So now you're going broad, and you start basically going to more specifics. Then you determine your outcome metrics, which are your KPIs, key performance indicators. And then the final component is the budget. So here you're not going to compose a budget, but you're going to, choose about how you would approach budgeting for this plan with basically some level of criteria. So this is, overall the sections that you have to understand in order to move forward. And what you have learned in this class in developing specifically a media plan is, again, setting your media objectives, deciding on your strategies, deciding on the media mix, and charting the tactical plan. Here we're going a little bit broader because you're going beyond a media plan. You're actually trying to understand the audience and not two-dimensional, even though the plan is going to ask you to do that. But we're trying to, you have a skeleton, now we're adding the flesh and the skin and everything to make it a full human, right? So let's start with and just a few reminders of, because you're going to have to do that in the plan, your planning target and your measurement target, understanding that the planning target definition is behavioral and attitudinal, in consumption and all those, things that give you more explanation of why people, why do they belong to that particular target. And the other one is a measurement target, which is age, gender. Okay, and I also reminding you of the budget, the basic budgets, objective tasks, affordability, which ties the product profitability on a payout point, percentage of sales, or competitive spending. And so let's talk about the stakeholder audience analysis and mapping exercise. So stakeholders are segments within all the different audiences that a corporation has. So the stakeholder, if you really take it on the broad definition, a stakeholder are those segments that affect the corporation and that the corporation affects them. So I'm giving you here, and by the way, excuse me for my limited design capabilities. I'm just trying to get the point across, and I'm a very visual person. I wish I was more of a designer. Just a warning that I excuse my limited design capabilities. Well, this is just a stakeholder map. It's a simple map where you see how the audience for this particular corporation is divided into different segments. Customers, and even the customers are further divided. Business consultants, which are further divided. Trade unions, financial institutions, competitors, which is further divided, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the example that I'm going to give you is the example, and again, this is just another stakeholder mapping. But I'm going to give you the example that I use. This is actually, I've developed this concept of understanding all the different audiences, and I've been at this for a while now. Because why? It allows me to understand messaging, and it also allows me to understand platforms of communication. So let me break it down. So in the middle, you see FIU Creative Track Program. That's actually the corporation, if you will, right? So every one of these ovals affect the program in different degrees, and the program has the capability of affecting them in some way. So if you see the all the ovals that surround the FIU Creative Track Program, which is again the corporation, you see that they're mostly the potential applicant pool. I've further divided them in buckets. So if you see like green ones, which is again, one of my lowest hanging fruit. I have it as domestic students. Again, these are potential applicants that may apply to this program because this is the line of thinking that I use in order to, put together a plan. So in the top, I have all these potential applicants that are domestic internationals. I put them separately in order to, understand what I'm working with. The domestic students, some may have degrees in advertising or communications and some may not. Same buckets for internationals. So these are the typical, audiences that we have, right? But then I put here our partner school, Miami Ad School, which is the professional school that has the best reputation in the world for doing what they do. So I put it as a golden egg because they're the ones that are the king of leads. They uh, creative students that want to further their skills, they probably will find them first before they find them through the FIU, keywords. So I put them as a golden egg because they're the king of leads, as I was saying. But then here on the bottom in red, I put our FIU undergraduates that some of them may be under the college that we're in. So they may come from communication arts, maybe graphic design, but they're to us kind of like a captive audience, and I have ease of access to communicate with them, to invite them to events, to create lectures, special lectures for them. And then on the other one, I have FIU undergraduates in any fields outside of our college. To those, I'm a little bit more limited, so you have to start finding ways of communicating with these potential applicants. And then on here, I have undergraduates from other universities, and I put on the bottom minimal access. Why? Because if it's a competitive university, they may have their own master's degree, so they're not going to allow us to go in and talk to them. And then you have Miami Ad School, our partner, portfolio students. But even those, they're already part of the student body of our partner school. They're just not in the master's program. So here I don't touch them necessarily or market to them because it would be cannibalizing on a student that is already in the system. And down here I have parents. Why do I identify parents? Because if the parent is going to pay for that son or daughter to come study with us, they have to also understand, what the program offers, particularly in creative fields. But anyway, on the outside, I have identified internal and external stakeholders. Again, these are audiences that I have to keep in the radar. So I have our alumni, which can become brand ambassadors. They can, recommend. They can, do events, be speakers, etc. So I have them there because we need to continue communicating with them. Program advisors is a huge one, another stakeholder that we're doing special efforts. Why? Because an undergraduate student, that is has graduation dates coming up, and they're trying to understand, what are their next steps. Well, here, we need to make ourselves present and explain who we are and what the program offers, etc. So it merits identification and media tactics and messaging to address them. Then you have, the dean, the Carta dean, which is the college where we're in. So again, the dean can make our lives easier or more difficult. So they need to understand what we're doing and, And then FIU upper administration, they have to also understand the uniqueness of the program, etc. So all of these are internal stakeholders or audiences. And then these on the side are external stakeholders that may or may not merit to have a level of engagement plan, but they merit in order to complete the mapping to be identified. For example, the accreditation entity, keeping them informed, doing things right within the program. Other universities, yeah, they can become a real threat. So I'm constantly monitoring what are the top programs, particularly at the graduate level. Media, why? Because they can generate good press. So, writing press releases, seeing who would, publish a story, etc. And then, the community here of advertising, the creative community, the technology community, they're also a stakeholder that merits to elevate our stars. So we identify them because they deserve, a special level of engagement and communication. So this is what I mean by a stakeholder map: is take whatever your corporation is and develop all the potential audiences that you could communicate with, okay? And then the other thing that I find, and I've been doing, oh, by the way, this is still part of the creative track stakeholder map. I am not asking you to do this particularly, this additional step. But one of the things that I do is also from the years that I've had dealing with the program, is understand what are the most common misconceptions, correct perceptions from each bucket, because it will allow me not only to perhaps create content that may address some of these, misperceptions, etc., but also, the channels to use, to push this message forward. So you can read it, in your own time. But anyway, the other thing that I do, and this is to me has been invaluable, is the consumer journey mapping exercise. And the consumer journey can take different, it's a tool for many different things. But one of the things that is particularly important as it relates to media planning, communication strategy, engagement planning, however you want to call it, is that you understand from, awareness, consideration to, action. You understand what are the different phases that your potential audience or stakeholder goes through, and you start understanding where those touch points are. So this is the mapping to understand from, awareness to, final action. What are the different steps? And again, the journey can be done for different purposes. So here, you have the awareness, consideration, purchase, retention, and then the last point is advocacy. So those brand ambassadors can be in this advocacy stage, leaving reviews and etc. So let's look at it in action. By the way, I just wanted also to mention that in my different projects that I do, one of the things that I do is marketing research, and these are external to my work at FIU. And one of the things, in all honesty and sincerity, that I enjoy the most out of the many things that I do professionally. But recently, last year, I had to do a marketing research study, and I think I mentioned that when I talk about the journey. But understanding that this particular hospital asked me to define the experience of their patients. And that word experience, it took so many different, it was specifically for their patients. So the word experience to me was so broad that what the journey allowed me to do from, this patient being diagnosed to having gone through the surgery at this particular hospital and then going home to recuperation, by mapping the process of this patient journey in this case, allowed me to understand in which point did the client or the hospital intersect with that particular patient. When did that happen? So for example, if at the beginning, you go from diagnosis of a condition to research to then, point of contact, then a visit, etc. In that research, more than likely, what do people do? Go to the organization's website, and you start understanding, okay, that's a touch point. So that's actually how I was able to define the word experience within that context and that project. So the mapping again takes many different, applications. That is just one application, but this is probably one of the exercises that I like doing because it allows me to understand mindset, behavior, attitudes, etc. So here, in keeping with the example of the GSC creative track, I have here mapped, for example, if you're going to do a master's degree, more than likely you're a junior or a senior, and you start making, you start thinking about after you graduate. So that's why I identify them. Okay, they're in their junior or senior year, undergraduate. So now they start thinking, what are they going to do when they graduate, right? Go get a job, stay in grad school, do both, etc. So here they're considering options after graduation. They may go to advising, they may do their research, then they have a point of contact, and then they make a decision. They make a decision if they want to apply or not. And then in some cases, the applicant will present this to their financial sponsor, be their parents, etc. And so these are the journeys of this particular potential applicant. So on the bottom, you see that in every stage, I included, and again, this is not comprehensive, it's just to illustrate. But I put some of the things that some of the media tactics or platforms that you can use in order to communicate to that particular potential audience at that phase of their journey. So here, if they're considering options about graduation, how about to do events and have speakers that can come and show them, what a career in this field looks like. Advising, well, we have to, develop, again, as I identified the advisors, as a potential and very important stakeholder. Now here you can see that if that student is going to an advisor, then not only are we communicating with the student, we have to communicate with the advisor because they're a point of entry, right? So here we have to create some sort of advisor campaign where we're sending them information. If you see a student that is creative and they come to you, et cetera, et cetera. Online research, well, if the student is doing online research, typing in certain keywords, well, this is where organic content marketing, ongoing content marketing comes in, writing blogs and creating content that have those very specific keywords that are the keywords that these potential applicants look for. Then point of contact, obviously, now we're talking, what do you do after? right? And then decision to apply. Okay, great. How do you keep them motivated and in the loop? So this is, technically a very simple journey map for one of the stakeholders. And again, the stakeholder here is what? Well, the GSC Creative is the corporation, but I am putting this as if the stakeholder is our undergrad, FIU undergraduate students, because you can do the advising, you can do the events, and they're there as, again, captive audience. So hopefully this is making sense. So moving forward, um, then we go into the actual plan. And in the actual plan, by the way, making again the distinction between the goals and objectives. Remember that a goal is broader in scope, is broader in time frame, and objectives are the opposite. They tend to be narrow in scope and shorter time periods. And then going the plan. Sorry, this is very small, but what you have to do here, and again, follow the parameters of the assignment, but what you have to do here is for one stakeholder. Technically, you would select your top stakeholders and have a plan for each. Those that are, critical to the survival and, effectiveness and having the corporation thrive will require you to have a plan for those stakeholders that are so important to the bottom line. So if you see here up top, and again, follow this format, and again, pick something that you're familiar with and is relevant to you, because it's going to make that much more sense. So here, you see that on top, my goal with the GSC Creative Track is to increase leads coming from FIU, because again, remember, our partner school is the one that is most well known for the creativity in communications and advertising. We're not necessarily there. We're an academic institution. Together, we make a power couple, right? But since FIU has to contribute to the funnel, and again, I see everything like a funnel, right? Because you have maybe somebody saw a blog that becomes an inquiry. That inquiry is lead number one. Then you move them over to maybe point of contact. That's, if you want to look at it, some sort of a conversion, because they're go back to the lessons that you're learning in this module of digital. There's a conversion there, and that conversion means, well, you took it from curiosity and an inquiry to now point of contact. They want to know more. They were interested. So conversion number one. Conversion number two, still a lead, right? Would be that point of contact becomes an actual application. So then from application to admission, there's a lot of different factors that we have little control over, but that's actually, I would say, your third conversion, right? Taking it from a lead to an actual point of contact to an application to an admitted student. So that to me is the funnel through which I operate. So what you're seeing here is for one stakeholder again, and the goal is to increase leads coming from FIU by 30% using as a benchmark the last 3 years. But that increase is over the next 3 years, which in this environment, they're fiscal years, they're academic years and fiscal years. So that's my goal. I'm using the benchmark of the last 3 years, and I want that increase to be 30% over the next 3 years. So I may see it as 10% and then 10% and another 10%, or if it grows consistently and we keep that consistency, we're doing good. And by the way, I do check these numbers. So if you look here, again, on the very top, sorry, that is small, but at the very top, you see the stakeholder for this particular plan, a measurement target. I put a primary and a secondary. Planning target, again, this is more behavioral and attitudinal, but I put it here in bullet point. The main issues in, encountering this particular plan. So I identified the issues that I see, right? And you can read it on your own. And then the objectives. What do I want to do with this plan? I have 5 objectives here. And again, you have a quota, in the assignment. And then I have 9 different media and tactical activities that range from blogs, infographic, content marketing, email marketing, event marketing, and then I have them in different, different levels to different, degrees. Then on the next page, and again, just go and read, the fine print, literally. The next phase would be the KPIs. How are we going to measure success? I have here 14 KPIs. Again, these are, my KPIs. You're not gonna have to produce 14. And then the last one, and again, this is probably the budget method that I've used the most in my career, which is the objective task method. The objective task method is basically identifying everything that has a cost component, and then you add it, add everything and see where you net out. Obviously, that allows you then to go and project results. And there's different methods that we discussed, during that portion of the class. But my style, is okay, let me see what are the different elements of running this program. You kind of guesstimate it based on history, maybe based on projections, meaning what you want to do. Then you add it all up, and that budget, along with perhaps, some level of margin to be able to create a profit, if that's the case. In this particular case, the profit doesn't mean much because of the business model that is under, but more budget, because we're being successful, means that I can create other things, like, for example, scholarships, because we have to basically balance balance the budget 0 every fiscal year. That's just the business model that we're in. So we cannot show a profit. But what it allows me to do, again, with that extra money, is to get creative and hopefully even create, scholarships and funding, even if it's small funds to help students out. That would be, my ideal scenario. So I hope that this explanation of the assignment allows you to create a document and a series of exercises so that you see what you've learned in class, in action. But again, more importantly, if you make it relevant to something that you're already doing, it's going to make that much more sense, and you're going to be able to see the application right there. Okay, so anyway, any questions, reach out. Good luck in the last 2 weeks of this mini term.